This man, Philippe Gilbert, was unstoppable last year, and now he takes on Frank Schleck and his more famous brother Andy as they return to the Belgian Ardennes for the Flèche Wallonne Classic and this famous finish on the Mer de Huy. The Spring Classics campaign continues today with the Flèche Wallonne, a one-day race located in the Walloon section of Belgium, challenges the riders with several short but steep punishing climbs. Most notable, the steep slopes of the Mer de Huy, where the race ends.
And the crowd will go absolutely ballistic for Philippe Gilbert as he gets the win that he'd been looking for many, many years.
Last year's king of the Ardennes Classic, Philippe Gilbert, was unbeatable a year ago, but so far is winless in 2012. He lines up today hoping to get back on top. Tour de France hopeful Andy Schleck is also looking to get back up to speed after a slow start. His Radio Shack Nissan team has many cards to play with Frank Schleck and the American Chris Horner, both capable of conquering the climbs to win. The 76th edition of Flèche Wallonne is next on the NBC Sports Network. Hello and welcome to the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra. It's the 76th running of the Flèche Wallonne Classic today as it courses between Charleroi and Huy. I'm Phil Liggett and alongside me is Paul Sherwin. And as we look down here, it's a dubious day of weather, Paul, but totally different now to the cobblestones of the Northern Classics.
Yes, it's a different kind of rider. The riders like Tom Bonan, who dominated the cobblestone classics, now will take a little bit of a breather while we start to see for the first time guys who are lining up to show themselves as pre-race favourites for the Tour de France.
Well, the race this day is now moving away from the flatlands as Flanders as we go further away now down into the Ardennes region. It's a hilly route. It's only a short distance, though.
Well, it is a short distance. It's a midweek race in between two long classics, starting from Charleroi, as it has done for many years now, moving in a northeasterly direction. But it's all about the hills. It's really, Phil, all about the Mer de Huy. The riders hit the Mer de Huy for the first time after about 40 miles. They go out on a large loop, come back up the Mer de Huy, which is the central part of this course, and then finally coming up to Huy to finish at the last time after 120.5 miles.
Well, for the riders now, and I can tell you there's rain falling at the start today, the riders are concentrating on the upcoming Tour de France in July. The one man who was unbeatable last year, Paul, Philippe Gilbert. But he joins the American BMC squad, and frankly, he's done nothing this year.
He's had a very difficult start to the season. He's had teeth problems which have been rectified, and over the last couple of weeks, he seems to be coming back to the form that he had this time last year, and that's why I think he's going to be a man to beat.
And other riders who need to do well this time out and prove to us that they're on form for July.
Well, previously, Andy Schleck and his brother Frank Schleck have always ridden well in the Flèche Wallonne. Second 2 years ago for Andy, 7th in 2011 for Frank. They will try and come out well, but one man who's always been consistent at this race is Joaquim Rodriguez, the Spanish rider on Team Katusha.
And both of their teams need some results this week because they really haven't had much since the season began. Well, before we go to the action, let's have a look at what happened. The traditional breakaway, the rider in second place in green, Dirk Bellemakers of Landbouw Credit. He got clear at 35 miles. He was joined 2 miles later by the rider in white, Anthony Roux. And then they were chased for the moment by Stef de Wilde. And the blood on his knee there, he was involved in a fall after about 20 miles. But he was now caught in no man's land with the Mer de Huy. First time up, Paul, the stars are at the front.
Well, if you look over to the right-hand side, you can see Andy Schleck. That's a sign that he's taken this race extremely seriously. We don't really get an idea from the angle of this shot just how steep this climb is. Riders putting special sprockets on at the back here for this climb. Around about a 26-2 sprocket you need to get up this mountain. Jens Voigt at the front as well, making sure that his rider, Andy Schleck, is away from any chance of danger.
Back to the pictures now as we move on up the road here, and the gap now is just under 3 minutes for these two riders out in front on the Côte de Boussal. As we now are 44 kilometres, that's about 28 miles from the finish. They've done pretty well, Paul. Now, when they went up the climb the first time, the big pack were 3 minutes and 38 seconds back of these two. So they haven't lost them much with only 27 miles to go to the finish.
Yes, but this is the part of the Flèche Wallonne where the main field starts to get a little bit nervous and starts to try and force small groups off the front end of the pack. And it's this part of the course where we see the repetitive nature now of the climbs coming into play.
Now, this is a pattern we're going to see a lot of now. Riders sensing they might be able to get across. This is a counter move here by Sander Armé. He's been a pro since 2007. He's never won a professional race, but he never stops trying either.
Well, no, he's from the Top Sport Vlaanderen squad, which is a Belgian team which is used as a nursery squad, if you like, for all the big top professional teams. And they look out throughout all of the Belgian riders to see who they feel has got a chance to get into the professional ranks. And once they've come through this team, they very often go on to greater things.
And what's going to happen here is the race favourites who are in that big pack are going to use this man and others like him as a diversion while they plan their own moves.
Yes, but if you look at the front end of the main field now, you can see the riders from the big teams are taking this very seriously. The red and white jerseys there, those are Team Katusha. Not too far away, the pale turquoise jersey, that's Team Astana. They get themselves organised, ready to pick up the pacemaking. I wouldn't be surprised a little bit later on to see a move by Radio Shack Nissan and Trek coming to the front to see whether or not Frank Schleck can do something today, because Frank Schleck is the kind of rider, he suits this kind of a finish at the top of the Mur de Huy.
Frank Schleck, a rider who's often ridden well in this event. Now, they brought back Armé there, but what they've also done is bring down that time gap. It's now 2 minutes and 46 seconds as we move briefly back up to the leaders here. Bellemakers, he's 28 years of age now. He turned professional back in 2008, and he's the rider in the lead just now. And he's never, ever ridden for another pro team. He's always ridden for the Dutch Landbouw Credit now. Little bit of a split coming now as we get into the open countryside. It's really quite barren in places in the Ardennes. They've been in and out of heavy rain, and that looks to me as though Andy Schleck is making a move with a teammate doing the pacemaking to get him away from the field.
Well, that's Andy Schleck in second position there, just going through now. This is very often the way this develops in the Flèche Wallonne. It's actually not even on the climb field. It's usually over the top of the climb that the acceleration happens. It looks like Didier there is the man who's made the effort there for Andy Schleck. And now, with 42 kilometres, 26 miles of racing to go, Andy Schleck is trying to prove to himself and to his team that he's back on form for the Tour de France.
Exactly. This is a big test bed, and this is very typical of Andy Schleck. We haven't seen much of him at all year. He's done a typical start to the season. No good form, no good results, and this is a test for him. He's not interested in the rise behind. He wants to prove to himself he's going well. He's taking with him there a very strong Russian rider in Yuri Trofimov.
Well, just look at the way he's pedaling here. He's very determined. This is an indication that, you know, in previous years, Andy Schleck has always tried to ride well in these two races, the Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. This is really the first time in the season we get an indicator as to whether or not the Tour de France riders are coming onto the right schedule to be in form for July.
But, you know, he's gone very, very early on. That's why I think it's a test to see just how the form is here. Trofimov cannot work with him. He's just checking over his shoulder and just about hanging on to Andy's back wheel here. Now, that was a good move by Laurent Didier, completely planned. Schleck has said to his teammates, get me away from the field, and once he got him away, he's gone back to the field. Schleck is trying to go.
And bear in mind as well, you've got the two-pronged attack of the Schleck brothers, because whether or not Andy gets caught away from a move like this, you can be absolutely certain, sitting in about 7th or 8th position there, Frank Schleck, his brother, will be waiting to see what happens. He'll hope that Andy gets caught a little bit later on in a climb, and bang, he'll go straight over the top.
And we still have one more climb of the week to come before we come round again for the finish. This is a very typical Andy Schleck move, and he's out to test himself as well as the rest of the riders in Flèche Wallonne. Well, racing now underway. We've got just on 26 miles to race to the finish. Will Philippe Gilbert announce his return to the top flight, or will the Schlecks take him on and beat him? We'll take a break. Well, there's the views of the finishing climb. We've also got to climb it once more before we go up for the final time. And this is the breakaway, still trying to get clear of the peloton and still over 2 minutes behind the two leaders. The descending style there of Andy Schleck. Only one Luxembourger has ever won this race, and that was Kim Kirken back in 2008.
Yeah, well, these two boys, Frank and Andy, they've always tried to ride well in this race. And in fact, we've got a rider coming across the gap here from Astana. I would presume that's going to be Dmitry Fofanov. He's a rider, Phil, who's been a professional since 1998. Now, he's taken advantage of this descent. A little bit further down, there's a very nasty left-hand bend. Here we go. Andy Schleck goes around that corner. In fact, he opens up a little bit of a gap on the rider with him. And as you can see now, they've got a big gap to try and get across in 25 miles of racing left to go to the finish.
Schleck won't let anybody get settled in here. Oh, there's been a crash here. And that is Euskadi down there on the floor. It looks as though, look at his number, it's Gorka Izagir. Now that really is sad. These are the big dangers on these roads, Paul. They're quite narrow, and the peloton is now under big pressure from this Schleck attack. Yeah,
it's a pity for Gorka Izagir. He's a very young rider, just at 23 years of age, and they reckon he's going to be a big star in French cycling. It happened over on the left-hand side there, and I'm not sure exactly what happened. He was in the middle of the road. These are actually very nasty roads here as well. You can see a little bit of a break up there. We're right in the very heart of the Ardennes. They have very vicious winters here, and very often in the early part of spring, there are cracks appearing in the road, and that's maybe something that he rode into there.
And winter a little bit extended here, because although it should be nicely warm and spring here, it is quite cold today. Temperatures around about 50 degrees at the moment, but it chills right down in these hailstorms we get, and then the sun comes out. Right, these are the three riders. They've settled down, but Fofanov has caught them but can't do anything about them, and neither can the rider in front here, Yuri Trofimov, because there's two riders here right up there, and they can't help out Schleck at all. Now, as those three riders continue towards the finishing line, the women's race, which is the famous Tour of Flanders for women, is one of the most prestigious on the calendar. And look at this now, because this is a result here for Evelyn Stevens. She's coming up the climb here. She's in the middle of the picture, and she's holding off none other than Marianne Vos, who is she's in second place now at the moment. She's the leader of the World Cup Series. Vos is trying for it, but a huge effort being made by Evelyn Stevens. And you know, Paul, this is going to turn out to be the biggest win for this American woman. And I'll tell you what, to beat Marianne Vos when she leads like this is almost impossible. But a huge effort by Stevens brings her just over the top of one of the finest women cyclists in the world. And that has done Evelyn Stevens the world of good for selection for the Olympic Games in London. She comes from New York, and she really has conquered the Belgian Ardennes today. Well done, Evelyn Stevens. Back to the road here now. We're just about 24 miles from the finish.
Yeah, let's not forget the two leaders here. Well, this is Anthony Roux slipping into second place, number 206 there. They've got three riders chasing halfway across the gap, and if you look at the time at the top of the screen there, 2 minutes is the gap back to the front end of the main field, who are now starting to take this race very, very seriously indeed. I wouldn't expect the early morning breakaway to succeed on a day like this, but as you can see, Anthony Roux here is making sure he keeps himself topped up with energy. It is a very cold day, and in fact, on a cold day like this, you've got to make sure you eat that little bit more, because you'll burn up a lot more calories. And a day like this, these riders will burn approximately 5,000 calories during the course of the event.
Well, despite the efforts being made by the peloton, I think these two are doing pretty well now. Just over 2 minutes the advantage. We've got to be honest, they're not going to get to the finish at 2 minutes and 37 kilometres and two climbs of the Mer de Huy to come. They can't possibly survive, but they're not going to give up trying. Neither of them are big road race winners in the world of professional cycling. The Frenchman in the white up front, Anthony Roux, he's ridden the Tour de France and finished it the past 2 years. But this, I can't get over this. This is a terrific effort by Andy Schleck, because he is not allowing anybody to work with him. Back in the peloton here now, Katusha trying to break up the chase, because they've got Trofimov up in the lead. The champion of Belgium, Philippe Gilbert, he's been seen at the back of the peloton for much of the day, Paul, but he's taking closer notice now.
Well, he's a fighter, you know, Philippe Gilbert. Yes, he did have a very nasty start to the season. Everybody expected great things of him early on this year, because of the fact he was such a dominant character last year. #1 ranked bike rider in the world. He's got Greg Van Avermaet who'll be looking after him to try and get him into the bottom of the Mer de Huy in an ideal position. Watch out, though, for Team Katusha. They always ride well at this race. Joaquim Rodriguez, he was the rider just popping in and out there. He wears number 11. There he is with the bands around his arm there, a former champion of Spain.
Well, looking down at the camera, again it's showing Andy Schleck. This is very typically Andy Schleck, who's been awarded the Tour de France of a couple of years ago since the disqualification confirmed of Alberto Contador. and he doesn't want that title. He wants to win it this year, he says, and prove he's the rightful owner of a Tour victory. But the peloton know the danger of a Schleck attack, and they're closing in. We're dipping also inside the 2 minutes to the two leaders.
Well, it's about 20 seconds, the second group on the road with Andy Schleck to the front end of this main field. And in fact, it's the Lotto squad now, Phil, who are doing all of the pace-making. They're obviously going to give their chance today to Jelle Venendert. He was a big revelation for that squad last year. And, of course, they've got another joker in the pack, Jürgen van den Broek, who has got the explosive ability to do well on a finishing climb like the Muur de Huy.
Never asks for any help, this man. He's testing himself as well as the rest of the peloton. He is the dangerous move of the day so far. We'll take a break. On Tuesday, the Epic Cycle Series presented by Michelob Ultra continues with the Tour de Romandie from Switzerland, where Cadel Evans looks to defend last year's win. The Tour Romandie begins Tuesday at 5 on the NBC Sports Network. Well, Mark Cavendish, by the way, will also be riding that as we pick up the action again here. We're just about 21 miles from the finish, and Andy Schleck will not desist. And we've got to be honest, Paul, he's not going very far ahead of the field. Well,
he's only got about 15 to 20 second advantage over the front end of the peloton, Phil. I have a funny feeling that what he's doing today, this is much more of a suicide attack for Andy Schleck. He's probably trying to set something up for Frank.
Yes, and Andy Schleck is today's Road ID athlete profile. So this is going to be a first as well. Brothers on the podium. Their ambition was to be first and second. They've had to be content with second and third, but they have been the most gracious men in defeat as they were in attack.
I was second again. It was not meant to be, but it was a hard tour. Didn't see a major time gap until of the stage of Galibier, where I took big risks, but I succeeded.
Well, this has had to have shocked the race leaders because he's gone so far from the finish. They will be unwise not to react to this.
We looked to the stages, and I think it was four days before, and I said, you would show some balls if you do that.
The legs are folding beneath his body here. He will win the stage, and that he thoroughly deserved.
I was really happy, not just that I won the stage, but that my idea, my plan went through. Of course, I would have liked to be in yellow, but I was okay with my performance over the tour. A major bonus was that I could stand with my brother on the podium. Well, what does people do? They criticize when two guys sitting in a bar and they're talking about how beautiful the weather is out there. That's not interesting. It's much more interesting if you criticize politics or sport athletes. We tried. I don't deny that I did some mistakes in the tour. I'm not a specialist in time trial. I just went all in, gave everything I had, but halfway through I felt it's not going to be good.
He got his hands on yellow and it's been ripped off his back by the time trial.
This year I got the best people on my side, and I hope that we can work on that I don't lose the tour anymore. You know, the day I don't do any mistake, and the day everything runs perfect, I'm probably in yellow in Paris.
And that's our Road ID athlete profile. You know, people can be so cruel, can't they, Paul? I mean, he is a magnificent athlete, 3 times second in the Tour de France. Now he's down to 2 because he's been given that victory on the disqualification of Contador, which he doesn't really want. But this man is an animator of July.
Well, he is an animator. Andy was an animator last year, Phil, because as we look down at the Flèche Wallonne, I have to say that ifs and buts can always win bike races, but if the wind had been in a different direction on that day that Andy Schleck attacked in the Alps last year, he could have run out the overall winner last year in the Tour.
Absolutely right, Paul. Well, looking down from the helicopter, just as they're going round the arc of the road here, you can see the 3 riders just about amongst the motorbikes. I reckon about 10 seconds ahead of the peloton, so despite the work by Andy Schleck, they're keeping a very, very close eye on him. And the next up is the second ascent of the Huy.
Well, just to put it into perspective, Phil, a minute and 42 seconds. Once they start to hit the Muur de Huy, that's only a kilometre or 600 yards difference between the front group and the main field. That is the town of Huy in the background. They will approach it from this side of the River Meuse, which is just over on the right-hand side. It goes across into Holland, about 50 miles away from here, and becomes the River Maas and makes its way all the way up to the North Sea. But these 2 riders, you watch that clock now. Once they hit the Muur de Huy now for the second time, it's going to be like a man with a hammer smacking them across the head.
Well, the sun is out here as we approach the Mer de Huy, but looking ahead there, it looks like we're heading back into the showers because a lot of rain in the sky as well, and that could be crucial as these roads really do twist and turn. When we go over the hill this time and out onto the final short circuit, there are a number of climbs though which the riders haven't tackled yet on this particular final circuit, and that is why I can't really offer much hope for these two riders to hold off. The gap is slowly coming down, and the riders who fancy their chances, I think, might make a move this time up the climb.
Well, they'll have a little dig, definitely, because they realise once they get to the top of the Mer de Huy this time, there's not much more than 18 miles left to go to the finish. And look at this.
Look at the speed.
This is a charge, Phil, to be in the first 4 or 5 positions going into the Mer de Huy. The Mer de Huy is so narrow. If you're in 20th or 25th position and there's a split on the climb of the Mer de Huy, you're going to have to try and chase back 20 or 30 seconds once you go over the top.
We're running inside the last 20 miles of the 76 Flèche Wallonne now. 1:38 is the gap. The field are racing towards the Mer de Huy. We will be on the climb when we come back after this. Welcome back as we continue our coverage of the 76 Flèche Wallonne. We are down just on the Dutch frontiers here in Belgium, in Huy, as we head towards the second of 3 climbs of the Mer de Huy. And it looks, after a brave move here, largely under the impetus of Andy Schleck, the rider in black at the back, the peloton have reeled them in, but we still have 2 leaders.
Yeah, I tend to think, Phil, that move by Andy Schleck was a little bit of a psychological move for himself, just to prove that he's got great legs, leading up now to the Tour de France, which is coming up in a couple of months' time. The survivors, and that's what these 2 men are going to be very shortly, Phil, the survivors of the early morning breakaway. Now, if you just look at the pedaling style there of Bellemakers in the green jersey, that was an indication that pain was starting to come in. And the length of the main peloton, this is almost as if it was a charge to the finish. Yes, at the top of the climb, they've still got 18 miles to go.
It's a charge for position, for the leading positions onto the climb, because the riders who fancy their luck today must be in the front half of this pack, just in case it breaks. These riders swinging onto the climb. Now, they've been in the lead for just on 70 miles today, which is a tremendous achievement. But this hill, I think, will really reduce that 1:16 gap.
Well, talk about a hill too far. This climb is 1 kilometre long. There are 2 more climbs to go on the circuit around here of Huy for the final time of 18 miles. And then once again, it's back up here. You can almost sense, Phil, that these riders now feel as if they're going to get caught. Well, the race referee there in the red car going by, he knows that the gap is closing very, very quickly. That's why he's getting out of there. But look at the clock. 1 minute 20, 1 minute 10, 1 minute. It's coming down very, very rapidly.
And just around the corner, the hill slaps the riders in the face. Now, the French rider here, Anthony Roux in the white. The last time a Frenchman won this race, and there haven't been too many of them, was Laurent Jalabert back in 1995. He did it again in 1997, and he's commentating at this moment on French television. There's only ever been 8 French victories in this race throughout the years.
Well, Anthony Roux there, he's actually making a bit of a comeback to the sport. He fractured a couple of vertebrae in his back last year, in fact towards the end of last season, when he was riding a cyclocross event, and that was a sport, a discipline of the sport a lot of these riders use in the winter months to keep the base form there. But look at the way their shoulders are rocking there. That's an indication of how tough this climb is. There you can see the man on the motorbike back in the back there with the red jersey on there. He in fact is one of the race controllers from the organising body. He's trying to get all of the cars out of the gap. And why? Because it's now come under the 1 minute mark. This race is about to change in the next 100 metres or so.
And the crowd tells us, Paul, it's also about the Mer de Huy here. This is the steepest part of the climb. They are 1 in 4 or 25%, whichever you use, as they climb up towards the finishing line. But of course they go on. There's still the best part of 20 miles on a much more difficult circuit to bring them back round for the finish. And it looks to me now as though Bellemakers is slightly stronger here than Roux as he tries to open the gap.
I can only tell you one word, Phil, to describe this climb. It's horrible. It really is absolutely horrible. If you've been in the early morning breakaway, your legs are screaming now to stop the pain. It's Team Liquigas Cannondale setting the pacemaking on the front. But look at the big men in the front end of the pack now. Looks like Chris Horner on the far side there in the black and white jersey there of Radio Shack Nissan Trek. A little bit further back, you've got the champion of Spain riding close to the front end of the main field. There is Philippe Gilbert in about 20th place in the black, yellow and red jersey, champion of Belgium. He doesn't look all that good at the moment, but he is keeping his eye on affairs.
Well, frankly, I don't think he's looked good all day. He's gambled on this race coming round to the finish altogether because he could win on the strength of the climb like he did last year. He's been seen around the rear of the bunch. Now he's taking closer order, much further up. The lime green here of the Liquigas team, Cannondale squad, they are working for Vincenzo Nibali. He's right in amongst the sharp end of the race now. There is Frank Schleck sliding up in the black on the outside, moving possibly into an attacking position after Andy Schleck did a lot of work earlier on. These boys are seeing the lead completely dissipate on the climb. But Bellamacas takes them over the top now. They have 19 miles to go to the finish. And I'm sorry to tell them, probably the hardest miles of the day.
Yep, they've got two very nasty climbs to go. But I tell you what, remember, Phil, at the bottom of the climb, the gap was 1 minute and 30 seconds. That's Chris Horner on the left-hand side there. He's had a great start to the season. Third in Tirreno Adriatico. This man, I don't know how he's able to bounce back for all of the terrible accidents that he has. But look at him dancing away from the main field with ease.
Well, let's be honest, he's about the oldest guy in the race. He's almost as old as we are. He's coming up 41 years of age in September this year. He never loses his enthusiasm as Horner stamps on those pedals. He turned pro back in 1995. 39 seconds as they cross over the line, but Horner leads them across. Horner is setting this up, I suspect, for Frank Schleck and not Andy.
Well, Frank Schleck, there he is, just going through, and he's in good position, about 19th position for Frank Schleck. Phil, they lost the two leaders almost a minute on the slopes of that climb. That puts it into perspective.
Absolutely, it had to be, because they've been in the lead for so long. Now, over the top here, the leaders are going to keep the pressure on. We should see this peloton start to break up in the centre. The weaker riders now will not recover from this second time up the climb.
No, they want to. Now they can start. Once it straightens out on this final circuit of 18 miles, Phil, on the long straights of 500 or 600 metres, they will now start to see those two leaders. They'll be able to judge the amount of effort they need to grab them before the final few climbs of this afternoon's race.
Well, looking at the riders here at the rear of the pack, they're already just glad to see the top of the second climb of the Mer de Huy. So the Flèche Wallonne will be decided on this final small circuit, and it could well go down to who is the strongest up this climb in approximately 40 minutes time. There are the two leaders, but watch out now as the camera pulls back. They make the right turn. 35 seconds is not very far when you've just come up a big hill. And Chris Horner, likely the oldest man in the race, of 40.3 years of age, is the man who's doing the damage for the Radio Shack Nissan team. There's the peloton. They now are organising themselves. They're getting ready for the kill, and we'll witness that when we come back. And now we just have 12 miles to go on this final pretty short circuit here before we get round to the finish on the Huy. The gap is inside 30 seconds, and just about everybody now is testing one another. There's another move from Movistar.
Movistar over on the right-hand side there. That's Rui Costa. Now, you might remember him last year. He was a young Portuguese rider, came to the Tour de France when we went up to one of the big mountaintop finishes at Superbest. He got himself the victory. They've got three riders prizing an advantage off the front end of the main field. 28 seconds is the gap, Phil. That is only 500 yards. They should be able to see the two leaders.
And that is Trofimov coming again for the Russian Katusha team. He was the rider that went clear with Andy Schleck on the last circuit. Looks as though he's still got some legs left here. 28 seconds the gap. The leaders there trying to indicate, let's help each other here out with the peloton, but there's a counter-attack. These are big moments now. This is where the race could be decided here.
Oh, this is what it looks like at the back, though. You can see the gap starting to appear in the peloton here, because arrière de la course means the back end of the main field. The third rider, Phil, getting across that gap there was in fact another former Tour de France stage winner, and of course that was Bryce Fellou.
Bryce Fellou made his name in the Tour de France, actually, as he was once a yellow jersey wearer, very briefly in Andorra a couple of years ago. Never really come back up to those levels, as the field here now are all grabbing each other's wheels and hoping. This peloton, Paul, has rapidly diminished since we came up the Mer de Huy.
Well, everyone knows now, this is crunch time. This is what the Tour, this race, the Flèche Wallonne, is all about. This final tour around the Mer de Huy, this 18-mile circuit, is when the real men come to the front end of the peloton. And in fact, even though though this is a hilly race, the wind is now starting to make the gaps in the main field.
Yeah, this is the most difficult part. Wide open, exposed roads now. The wind whipping across those fields can rip right through the peloton and split the riders. If you're not strong now, well, you lose your chance of all of the day. And the peloton is split into two distinct bunches back there.
Yes, and here's another group trying to get across the gap there. You can see a Radio Nissan Trek rider has forced the gap there. We've got another rider come across in an orange jersey. Looks like an Euskaltel-Euskadi rider, or could very well be Rabobank. These are the three men halfway across the gap, but look at the gap. It's now only 22 seconds between the leading group of riders out on the road and the main field.
But this is Costa at the back with the lime green helmet on. In the centre is Bryce Feliu, and the other rider here is Trofimov. They've looked over the shoulder. They've seen this next three riders coming up. They're going to try and get together. 6 against the rest would have a chance, I would think. All of this is bringing back those two riders who you now have to be full of admiration for. They've hung on out there despite the climb when they closed right down. 21 seconds, though. They can't possibly hold these riders off now once we get back to the climb.
Look at the length of the main field, though. You can understand now that the hammer is seriously down in the Flèche Wallonne. We're inside of 30 kilometres to go. That's inside of 80 miles left of racing, and everyone now is scrambling. I would expect when we get to the next climb of the day, Phil, we'll start to see a serious group beginning to form at the front end, because these next two climbs that are looming on the horizon are the kind of climbs it's very good to use as a rampart for an attack. Now, this is another move coming again from Movistar.
This is Visconti, the champion of Italy, who came up in those two riders that came up here. Tom Slechta was another one. He's the third wheel here. This kid's only 22 years of age. He's had no big wins yet, but he did finish 6th overall in the Tour of Oman, which indicates he can climb despite his youth and the splits. Now, take a look at the roads. They didn't catch these rains because they came just before the riders got here, but the rain is coming back. This could provide us with a very precarious finish.
I was just going to bring up the point about the rain. It has gone through here, a slight shower, but the slippery nature of the road now is going to make it quite precarious, because there's some nasty corners on this final lap here before the riders get back into Hui for the final climb. And you may well see one or two riders taking risks, and if they take too many risks, we could see a few little shunts.
Well, just at the way they're scurrying across here, we've got about 50 riders left in this race, and that is all now. And before they get caught, let me confirm the names. Rui Costa, Trofimov, Bryce Feliu, Giovanni Visconti and Tom Slechta are the riders up there. But I think they're going to bring them all back. In fact, I think they have brought them all back.
Well, it's only 15 seconds now separating these two riders. That's 250 yards. But look at the speed. These two riders, Phil, as you said once before, hats off to these two men. They have not given up the ghost yet. They will keep fighting right down to the very end, because they know once the road starts to get a little bit slippery like this, all it takes is an accident behind and everyone slows down, and these guys can take that 12-second advantage back up to 30 or 40. I don't think that's going to happen, though, because when you see the nervousness in the main field, they want their prey today.
Now, this is one of the most beautiful parts of Belgium here in the Ardennes. We're running towards the Dutch borders, but it's very heavily wooded. The roads are narrow. It's a lovely place to come for a bicycle ride in the tranquility of a Sunday morning. But when you run a bike race of this quality here, and remember, this race goes on back into the 1940s. It's one of Belgium's most famous races. People say it's always a race to who wins on top of the Hui from the peloton. That might yet be the case. We'll take a break. Me last week, so note that it is Cali. Back to the action here in the Flèche Wallonne. 22.7 kilometres to go. That is about 13 miles from the finish.
Well, Visconti just there for a brief moment there, Phil, looking very aggressive, and he's a rider who knows how to finish off a race. In fact, he's twice been the national champion of Italy, but look at the long line, and then 5th and 6th position there. You might just notice two Radio Shack Nissan Trek riders keeping a very close eye on affairs. I think today they probably... Oh, there's a crash!
And that looks a nasty fall right down on his face here. It looks as though it's one of the Columbia Cola Sports riders, and well, I'm looking at it from here, and it looks as though it is Robinson Chalapud who's gone down. We might see how he did it. No, we don't, but he's on the far right of the road. Rider's gone around him. You see, this is what happens with the slippery roads here. He's probably touched the wheel in front. That is the result. The Columbia Cola Porters team is still looking for its first win in Europe. They're out here from Colombia. and I don't think it's going to be today. 17 seconds is the gap now, and it's Visconti and Tom Slakter who have gone clear. They were in that original group of 6.
Well, what they're still trying to do is see whether they can hold off the charging peloton, but there's a lot of very dangerous, nervous riders here. Also, Phil, again, Lotto moving to the front. They're obviously thinking about Van den Dert. He had that brilliant stage victory in the Tour de France last year to the Plateau de Bay, when nobody really knew who he was, and all of a sudden, well, his name is written down in the history books forever.
Just look at the work the Russian Katusha team are doing here. Now, it can only be for Joaquim Rodriguez, the hilltop finishing specialist who's been twice second in the last 2 years here. If they can get him down to the finish, he'll be a threat for sure. We've still got those 2 leaders out front, Belamakers and Anthony Roux. They will not give up. There they are, Paul. The gap is 14 seconds. Now, on the straights, they must be visible to the peloton.
They are visible. 14 seconds is about 250 yards of these riders now. That was 20 kilometres to go, the official distance to the finishing line. The final kilometre uphill, that's 12 miles of racing, and these guys don't look like they're losing any firepower.
I'll tell you what, if young Tom Slakter, who's only 22 in the orange at the back here, gets up along with Visconti, the champion of Italy, they might find that the extra ammunition could prolong the pain a little bit longer out there. Visconti is a sprinter, really, but he's going for a long one. Tom Slakter at 22, very much a developing rider. The Amateur Tour de France, which is called the Tour de l'Avenir, the race of the future, in 2010, Tom Slakter finished in 4th place overall. So he's a young man, but he's clearly got talent.
Katusha doing the pacemaking, though, Phil. These are the dangerous moments now, where as we start to get into the real action here of the Flèche Wallonne. A lot of riders will be very nervous, especially once you've seen a crash on a descent like this. Even sometimes worse than actually seeing the crash is hearing it behind you, because the scraping of the metal along the roads really does put a shiver down your spine.
Well, this is very serious business now, because none of this peloton here really believe those 4 riders in front, and they're coming back all of the time, have a chance of winning this race. This is now the teammates here trying to weaken the team leaders in the pack, and one of those is Frank Schleck, who has moved to the front.
Yeah, but in 4th position in this line of riders, in the Lotto jersey, the blue and white jersey, you can just see the white helmet popping through that. In fact, is Van den Dert of Team Lotto. He's a good tip for the top for the final like this, and yes, the Schleck brothers are riding in about 7th and 8th position in those jerseys. You can see the white bottom of the jersey with the black shoulders on them. Andy Schleck was fairly close to the front as well, but I think now he's turned the tables. He's moving his responsibility to looking after Frank.
At this stage of the race, just on 11 miles to go down to the finish, the riders at the front half of this peloton are the strong men. Somewhere down there on our pictures there is the likely winner of the race when we come round to the Mer de Huy. It is going to be a strong man's battle up that climb, and it could all happen in the last kilometre today. These boys, they were down to 9, they're up to 14. Well, it's a real good show of tenacity. Neither of these riders have ever won a professional race, but why not keep on trying?
Well, just a quick look over the shoulders. You can see the front end of the main field, but when you're in the final few kilometres, the final few miles of a race like this, it's so very, very difficult to nail back the gap. As they go around the corner, they go out of sight, but once the road starts to straighten up, these riders, the main field, they've got their prey in sight, but they just can't quite claw back the final few seconds.
And in fairness, for the moment, the weather is in the favour of the 2 breakaways. That's why they've nudged it up to 16 seconds just now. These descents are treacherous in the main field, especially across those white lines on the road. They're very, very slippy. They're on the descent now, back towards the River Meuse. And if they continue down there, they've got a real chance to hang in and at least lead to the foot of the Huy. 16 seconds the gap. It's the Sao Paulo Indy 300, Sunday, April 29th on the NBC Sports Network. And just look at this, Paul, because they are bridging the gap to the 2 leaders. The first time anybody's seen them for the best part of 75 miles.
Well, I'm going to tell you, if you look at the profile at the bottom, this is the wrong time for the 2 leaders to get caught, because this is the Côte d'Armée, and it's 16 kilometres to go. That's 10 miles to go. They may well be happy to get a little bit of support for these 2 riders coming across their field, but the main field, well, they're not much more than 15 seconds in arrears. It could all come together over the top of this climb.
And it would leave at less than 9 miles to go to the finish. It's showdown time now. The 2 leaders have dangled out there for an awful long time since they came over the top of the Huy. We're heading back round where we rendezvous with the Huy again in about 8.5 miles. There's real pressure going on in the peloton now, because they feel it is all coming together, and Frank Schleck has punctured. The back tyre was is flat. Frank Schleck has a flat.
Well, that was bad luck for that man. This is the wrong time for that to happen. While we look at the front end of the main field, it seems as if Nissan Trek are falling apart here this afternoon, but in control at 10 kilometres to go are in fact Team Lotto.
Let's have a look at that again here now. Frank Schleck, he's on the right, number 71. He's just drifted out of our picture. A flat tyre for the champion of Luxembourg, looking for the car. It could not have happened at a worse time, because his chances of rejoining and being fresh enough to get up the hill and win now, I think, are probably gone.
And bear in mind, Phil, that he's had that flat tyre on this climb as well. It's on two. He's got 2 times climbs to go. He hasn't panicked. He's got the back wheel in nicely, but look, a little bit further up the road, it looks as if there's a teammate has slowed down to wait for him, to pace him back into the main field. This takes a lot of nervous energy away from you, especially when you're being concentrated for the whole day on the final climb of the afternoon, the Mur de Huy.
And again, it is the Russian squad of Joaquin Rodriguez and Katusha in the red on the front who are setting the pace. They have got great faith in Rodriguez today. He is a hill sprint finish specialist.
Yes, he certainly is, Phil. Look at the lime green helmet there and the slightly different coloured Movistar jersey. That's JJ Rojas, the Spanish national champion. Normally, I've got to tell you, he's an extremely good sprinter, but at the top of the climb, well, I'm not sure what went on in the middle of the road there. It looks like one of the Omega Quick-Step riders had a problem.
Same problem, gears jam maybe, but he's out of it as well now, as he was lucky not to be knocked off his bike there as he came to a grinding halt in the centre of the pack, because everybody now is very, very nervous indeed. Any move could win this race, and here we go again. 13 seconds is the gap.
Well, Rojas here in second position, the Spanish national champion. He's closing the gap down to this Astana rider, but this Phil now is starting to become tactical. And again, look at the way the road is starting to get wet. In the cars, the convoy of cars behind, Frank Schleck not panicking at all, trying to make his way through, trying to get himself back into the peloton. But once he makes contact with the peloton, he's got to get to the front of it if he wants to still be a force to be reckoned with in this race this afternoon.
But I have to say that Frank had got himself an extremely quick wheel change there. Frank finished 7th in this race a year ago.
This all over this. This is the remnants of the 4-man breakaway. The 2 early morning leaders, they're caught already by the front end of the main field. Visconti on the left-hand side there, Phil, the champion of Italy, is trying to insist with this acceleration, but there is the main field.
Well, the other two, not surprisingly, they've gone back, and they'll go out the back for sure. These two, the fresh legs that came up, Tom Slechta is the rider driving, 22 years of age, and he had a chance here, has to be said, with Giovanni Visconti, the champion of Italy, on the left. But there's a new raiding party coming across. Everybody, these are desperate moments now. Everybody feels any one of these moves could win the race today.
This is good for Team Movistar, because, yes, Giovanni Visconti, he's been in the breakaway, but about 3 or 4 riders behind him. I noticed his teammate, the Spanish national champion, JJ Rojas, he was there. He comfortably drifted across under the assistance of one of the 2 of the other chasers. Now they could see the forming of an 8 or 10 man group. There's still one more climb to go, Phil, though, before we come to the Mur de Huy for the final time.
Well, the Movistar squad, and they're always the squad with the lime green racing helmets on, they have used a lot of men in attacks today. Now they've picked up on Visconti, but their next sprinter has come across in Jose Rojas, has got into this group. But the peloton are not allowing anybody to move now, because there's many riders back there, and one has to include Philippe Gilbert. Will feel if they get all these riders to the base of the Mur de Huy, they will have the legs to beat them to the top.
Well, it is strung out, it's stretched into a very long line. Bear in mind, poor old Frank Schleck had a flat tyre at the most impossible time. He's still in the convoy of cars, trying to fight his way through the convoy of cars to try and get onto the tail end of this main field. Rojas now sees the fact that he's got a little bit of a gap over the main field. He now decides to continue with putting the hammer down. Everybody is throwing caution to the wind, because a lot of guys don't actually want to wait for the final sprint. It's such a difficult climb when you come to the Mur de Huy, but when you see riders looking over their shoulders like that, that's a telltale sign. Ooh, my legs are hurting a little bit. Have I hurt my legs enough to form a breakaway? When you can see the peloton, psychologically, not so good for you.
Not at all. And the riders here now, there's a little bit of easing of the pace here, and the wind pushing the riders over to the right of the road. But it looks as now they're feeling that they've tried some moves. Nobody has gone anywhere. They're now easing down. They're reassessing the situation before they go again. But we're running into the last 7 miles of the day.
And they're picking up a slight tailwind. We've got one more little climb to go over the top, down to the Murs for the final time, before everyone starts to get extremely nervous for that final attack of the Mur de Huy. And it's in that final couple of minutes effort this race is very often decided.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's almost a truce has been declared here behind the grey skies around Huy itself. Just over 7 miles to go to the finish. Nobody is trying to go away now. The fact is they realise they've played some cards and they haven't gone anywhere. I think Rojas was setting the pace there in the hope he could weaken the field for Alejandro Valverde, his team captain on his comeback season, who was the last Spanish winner of this race back in 2006. There, creeping up the outside, is Philippe Gilbert. He knows all about the finish on the Huy because he won there last year. And that's where we're going next after this break. We're back, and as you can see, so is the rain here on the Flèche Wallonne. It has just started again, and when the rain comes, well, it brings a new meaning to April showers. It's very, very heavy.
This part of the Ardennes, Phil, once the rain comes down, it really becomes bitterly cold, because, yes, it may well be the month of April, but we're just only getting out of the winter time. Yeah, there is Frank Schleck, Phil. He's got to the back end of the main field. He's got his teammate up alongside him, and that is Andy. They will try and scuttle up the outside of the main field now. You know about Frank Schleck. He may well be down, but he's never counted out.
Well, I agree, but he's got to be tired after that chase. Even though he got into the following team convoy there, he had to work his way through, and once he caught the back of the field, he's had to work his way up, and I don't think he's done that quite yet. We've got another counter move going on here at the moment, and it looks as though it could be just I don't think it's Rojas who's on the front there, Paul.
No, once again, Phil, it's Movistar. What they're trying to do is they're keeping the pressure on, they're keeping the speed up. I think you're right. I think they are trying to set this up for Alejandro Valverde, but this is a tactic, I think, that's actually got wrong. You've got two teams, Movistar in first position, in second position is Katusha. They're trying to set the race up for their leaders. They've ridden too hard, and they've gone off the front of the pack.
And just look how dark it is getting now, because these clouds are going to give us a grandstand shower for the finish. Look at the rain coming down now. This is extremely difficult at the moment. Number 31 just slipping through on the inside there was Martin Velic of Slovakia. And he didn't look as though he was enjoying. Oh, gently does it, boys, around that right-hander. The peloton, well, it's Vicioso who's gone clear. Again, the champion of Italy, and this time he's got Kirienka on his back wheel, not willing to help. Clearly, Kirienka is here to annoy because he wants Rodriguez to come out the pack at the finish.
And now watch this. This is the penultimate climb of the day for these riders. The legs are already hurting after they came along that flat part, and now the accelerations are starting to come. But I don't think the decision could be made on this climb, Phil. It could be made on the descent as we go back down to the River Meuse. Astana really throwing caution to the wind here. It's 1 kilometre now to go to the summit of this climb, but look at the riders. Look at the bobbing style of these nasty, steep little climbs. Phil, no, that isn't for Phil Liggett, I'm sorry, this afternoon. That's for Philippe Gilbert, and there he is on the right-hand side. You might just have noticed the black, yellow and red jersey, champion of Belgium. He wants to win again this year if he can.
Well, those little signs on the right indicated just a kilometre of climbing left, just over half a mile, and the peloton are going to go over the top here. But this is one of the Astana riders, and I think it might be Enrico Gasparotto who's trying to come up. Well, his tail is in the air today because a week ago, or not even a week ago, he won the Amstel Gold Race, so he believes in himself right now.
Well, that big lumbering style of the rider in second position there of Garmin Barracuda looked very much like the style of a rider, Heyzedal, the Canadian rider, also trying to come back to a bit of form. This is Christian van der Velde at the back. Van der Velde's ideas a little bit further on in the season. He's the rider with the blue jersey with the black stripe across it. Again, Garmin Barracuda. So Garmin Barracuda at the front of the peloton and at the back.
Well, the man from Chicago at the back there is getting used to what is pretty similar conditions from where he's probably come from. Although the sun is through again now, and this is the big figure of rider Heyzedal. He is looking his old strong self again. 18 months ago, he had a terrific Tour de France, and the Canadian is finding those legs again, I think.
Well, he was in the top 10 in the Tour de France on that occasion, but look, this race is stretched out into a long line. It really is weird weather in the Ardennes, I'd have to say that. 1 minute it's raining, the next minute the sun has come out to cheer up the riders.
And Heyzedal has made a move here. He thinks the slopes here is worth a go. Heyzedal is being joined by one rider just up on his wheel there, and Katusha, the riders in red, are trying to put matters to rights.
Well, this is a good move by Heyzedal. Let's not forget, Phil, he comes from a background of being a very good mountain bike rider. If he can get over the top of this climb, he can take the advantage of a dangerous descent, but that's not going to happen because look at the red and white jerseys of Katusha all over the front of this race right now. That's announcing something, Phil. They are trying to set this up from Joaquim Rodriguez.
Absolutely no question of that now as they jump on that. But this is the trouble at the back of the field now. These riders cannot respond anymore. Remember, their legs are wet now and very cold from that dumping of rain, and I don't think they've seen the last of it. Even though the sun is out here, the roads are wet and the clouds on the horizon are black.
They are black and blackening. This is the damage that's being done. That looks like Andy Schleck going backwards. He was in the front, back into the main field. He's made sure that he's got brother Frank into the peloton. Job done for the day. Forget it. Let me think about next Sunday.
And this is now an attack by a rider from Sky here, and it looks as though it might well be Lars Peter Nordhoff. He hasn't won a race, but he is a very strong member of the Sky squad, and he's making a move now. First time we've seen Sky in the action today, the British squad.
Yeah, but watch this. This is the descent. This is a hairpin bend around here. Take it carefully around there, boys, because there's a very slippy corner that we're landing ourselves into here. This, if you can handle a bike, is the chance to open up 10 or 15 seconds, especially on this descent. Look how slow the riders have to go, Phil. And now again, it looks like Heyerdahl coming across the gap. You see how that corner allowed them to once again open up a slight advantage over the pack.
You probably think they're attacking, Paul. In fact, they're trying to get rid of that black cloud behind them because it really is dark down there. But Heyerdahl has recognised a strong rider here in Lars Peter Nordhoff. He signed up for Sky after a great ride in the Tour of Britain, and they've kept him for 2 seasons now, and he is aggressive. I think he's trying to weaken the field for his team captain, Rigoberto Urán, who he said at the start today is on good form and he thinks he'll do a good ride, but as usual, somebody else attacks for the same squad.
But there are 2 teams now concerning their effort at the front of the pack. Katusha for Joachim Rodriguez and, of course, Lotto Belisol. They're looking after them and Jelle Vanendert because they believe he can finish this off. But the job is not that easy, especially when you've got these little bit of dry patches on the road, a little bit of damp. It's very, very precarious the way you go round a corner, because it might appear dry going into the corner. As you come out of the corner, which could be blind, it is extremely slippery.
Inside 5 miles to the finish, they prized out quite literally 10 seconds. They were lucky. If they'd arrived here 10 minutes earlier, they would have been absolutely soaked by the downpour, but they still have no rain here at this point. When we come back, we'll be at the finish on the Huy. See you in a moment. Well, it's been full of action, but now we're into the last 3 miles of the day, and taking into account the hill, we are about 8 minutes from the finish of this race, and the Canadian rider Heyerdahl on the American Garmin Barracuda team is trying to keep up here with Lars Peter Nordhoff of Team Sky. A British team and an American team going for gold.
Yes, who would have thought that 5 years ago, Phil? 3 American teams on the international circuit, a British team, and now joined by an Australian team as rider Heyerdahl really puts the hammer down here this afternoon. He knows at this distance to the finish, Phil, you can't hold anything back at all. This is a do-or-die effort. If he gets caught, he's going to finish last in the race, but it doesn't matter. He's trying.
You've got to give it a try now, because if we steady downhill, we'll get onto the banks of the River Meuse for the last time. We'll run along those banks, and then we will swing right onto the climb, and then you've just got to grovel up that climb as best you can. And the peloton know this. If they're holding them at 12 seconds, they still have a chance. And just look at this. We have 4 riders in red now. At the end of those 4 riders in red, you've got the champion of Belgium, Philippe Gilbert, who knows this climb as well, if not better than anyone. These 2 are desperate. The others are waiting to pounce.
Well, they're dragging out a little bit of an advantage here, Phil, because it's now up to 12 seconds with 3.8 kilometres to go. That's 2.5 miles of racing. We're not much more than 6 minutes of effort away, and these riders know that. They're dosing their effort, but they've got to just keep that little bit in reserve for that final climb of the day, because if you've got 30 seconds advantage at the final kilometre of the Mur de Huy, that can get blown away in that final ascent up to the finish line. The concentration on the face there, you can see of Nordhoff from Team Sky. He knows it hurts, but he knows that hurt could bring him a victory here this afternoon. Not far from the front, you can see the Spanish national champions jersey. That's the Movistar jersey with the Amarillo and red stripes around the middle.
Well, there's Nordhoff going through. He's from Norway. He's only 27 years of age, and he's never won a major race. He's had 1 win at the start of the year in Mallorca on the island in Spain. as the gap is now 12 seconds. This is where you've got to take it carefully on these descents. But they're desperate now, Paul. They can't afford to lose a single one of those seconds, and they could do with a few more.
They could do with more than 12 seconds, but these two riders will take the risks going around these corners. Just look at the way that back wheel slipped a little bit on the Sky Rider's back end there, but he corrected it nicely as he tries to stay in the slipstream of Ryder Hagedal. He's the big rider in the front. He's a huge rider from Canada, huge in reputation, huge in size and in power as well. He is hammering away. It's as if he's trying to destroy that bike with every pedal stroke that he's putting around, because he knows he's got to keep this on and hopefully start the Muur de Huy with a slight advantage. But the peloton, they're still waiting there at the bottom of the screen. You can see the line of riders at the front. Most of those riders are the riders from Team Katusha. They're being helped by the riders of Team Lotto. They want to make the contact if they can before the start of the climb, because afterwards it's confusion.
Well, I have to say this has been a return to his best ever form of Ryder Hagedal. Yes, he's hanging on to Nordog at the moment, but they have to give 100% because they can't save anything for the finish and the shadow boxing. They've actually removed that roundabout there, the traffic circle, so the race can go safely through. They know once they hit that traffic circle, they are about to swing up the climb. They've got about half a mile to go to the start of the climb, and there's the pack. The arrowhead is showing a vengeance, and it's carrying a poison tip.
It certainly is, but these guys may be well tipping the advantage towards themselves. The two leaders now are still sharing the pace-making. One by one, they go to the front. They're the ones who set the pace for the guy in the second position here. They're not far away from seeing that red kite now. 1.5 kilometres ago. That's a mile of racing, but that mile, Phil, is going to take them about 2.5 minutes to get to the top. Again, Hagedal out of the saddle. He's the rider in the first position. Nordog from Team Sky, he's in second place. Look at that grimace on his face. Yes, I know it hurts, young man, but this is a big professional bike race. It's interesting that Team Sky put the name down the side there. It really does help the commentators.
It certainly does. 13 seconds. They've really made a huge effort to just gain 1 second on the field. And frankly, 13 seconds will not be enough on this climb. There are too many riders in the front of that pack who are waiting and waiting and waiting just for the right turn before they make the move. People that know this climb know you have to judge your effort to perfection. As they come up towards the climb now, they're going onto the climb with a gap of about 13 seconds, and that is what 13 seconds look like, and it can't be enough, can it?
It is not enough, because this climb starts at a steep gradient, but as you get higher and higher up, and it gets even worse, and especially when you get into those corners. The corners on the Muur de Huy are around about 25%. It's hard for the spectators to walk up there in the first part of the day, especially these riders who've now done 194 kilometres, 120 miles of racing. This probably feels like 200 miles,
yeah.
But you can see Hagedal, he's getting into his rhythm now, but that rhythm is a rhythm of survival. It's not a rhythm of attack. Watch the different style coming from the front end of the peloton behind when these riders really start to hit it. Guys like Philippe Gilbert, they've got the acceleration that's required in a race like this.
Well, it's a move of desperation by Nordog here. He couldn't wait to see if Ryder Hagedal could hang on. Again, it's the red jersey of Katusha. The far left of our picture in the black there is Jelle van den Aert, and he is the top favourite for Belgium. Philippe Gilbert is there as well in the colours of black, red and yellow of the champion of Belgium. He's right on the front now. He's a shrewd rider. He spent a lot of time at the back of the race, and this is the catch. The camera's foreshortening it, but it's Van den Aert, Jelle van den Aert in the white helmet there, who could be first to reach them. And that boy is the man who won in the stage of the Tour de France last year.
Yeah, well, look at Hagedal. He's hanging on there, going around. This is one of the steepest parts of the climb. Philippe Gilbert, Phil, just going around, as you said, in the three-coloured jersey of the champion of Belgium. He's up into about 5th or 6th position. Hagedal is caught there. You can see going through there is Rodriguez in the white and red jersey of Katusha. Up into 6th place is Philippe Gilbert, the black, yellow and red jersey, champion of Belgium last year. Look at the acceleration.
That is Rodriguez, who decided he's gone very, very early. He might have misjudged this. The man who's finished second for the last 2 years and wants to win. He's heading up the race now. And this is why the boys in red, Katusha, have worked so hard all day. It's all down to this man to take the money home for the squad. But more importantly, he is riding for himself, having finished twice second. Look at that gap. Well, the Spanish haven't got a good reputation in this race. They've only won it twice before with Valverde and Igor Astalosa. Now Rodriguez is trying to make it 3, and I thought I saw the move by Gilbert.
You did see a move by Philippe Gilbert, but this acceleration by Rodriguez is absolutely phenomenal. There is Philippe Gilbert. He may well have left it just a little bit too late on this occasion. The pain now in these riders' legs. I reckon that gap, though, Phil, is 3 or 4 seconds to the second rider on the road.
That's a fabulous show of strength. Rodriguez has done it for us in the Tour de France when he won at Mons on a finish like this. He's done it here now after 2 years of being the bridesmaid. He is now the champion of the Mer de Huy. He gets the victory, and it looks like Albacini of the Green Edge Australian squad second. Gilbert will take third, and Venender there will cross the line in 4th place. That's as I saw it there, but what a great finish, and what a show of strength. And dare we say, Paul, so typical of Rodriguez.
No, that was a perfect move. He didn't want to make any mistakes, as he's made mistakes in the past and will leave it too late to make his acceleration. He decided when to go. He took no prisoners at all, and once he got that opening gap, they were not going to see him again. But Gilbert, Phil, coming up there in 3rd position, that's an announcement that Philippe Gilbert, the man who was #1 in the world at the end of last year, is back in form as well.
He really had to dig deeper, Gilbert, but he's in front of his own people, and in fact, he's not very far from where he lives here. He's a Walloon. He's part of this region of Belgium. But there is the congratulations for only the 3rd Spanish rider to conquer the Flèche Wallonne. There is Gilbert. He's looking very pained. That was a superhuman effort because, as I say, Paul, he's a Belgian.
He is, and as you said, on Sunday in Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he will ride past his front door before he climbs up the Côte de la Redoute. It's an indication that he's back. It's an indication that he's got the form for this weekend's racing. But this man today, he's come to this race so many times before. It's a race that suits him. He's made occasions, tactical errors in the final 400 or 500 metres. Today, he got it right.
And he's thanking his team for the amount of work they did throughout the whole day. They marshalled every move from the peloton. They didn't help it make progress. They were waiting for this man to show his skill on the finishing climb. And for him, it is win #4 of the season, and this the big one. We'll be back with all the podiums. Well, as we look down now here on the River Meuse, let's first of all have a look at the women's podium. And a little bit of history here for the United States, because no American woman has ever podiumed in the Flèche Wallonne. And here she is, Evelyn Stevens. She started out as a bank trader in New York, found she was very good at riding a bike, and now with this victory, she will be very definitely in the selectors' eyes for a place in the London Olympic Games. Her team, by the way, is Specialized Lululemon, so a big victory for them. She's beaten one of the world's finest women here in Marianne Vos, and Linda Willemsen, who's married to a New Zealander, by the way. She finishes in 3rd place. Now, doesn't she look happy? And well, she might. This was a great victory on top of the Mer de Huy for her. Let's now return to the men's event. And first of all, the Michelob Ultra Ride of the Day. Who else could it be, Paul? The finish by Joaquim Rodriguez.
He's come very close to winning this race on 2 occasions in the past, but today, Phil, his move was made at the right place. He opened the right amount of gap to get himself a brilliant victory at the top of the Mer de Huy.
And that is our Michelob Ultra Ride of the day. Let's have a look how it all finished here. Just under 5 hours, Rodriguez finally gets the win ahead of Albacini for the Australian Green Edge team. New team on the block this year. Gilbert getting in 3rd place there. Very good ride by Garmin Barracuda's Daniel Martin, who's an Irishman on an American squad. And Bauke Mollema from Rabobank claiming 7th place. And as we look further down, Frank Schleck getting home in 20th despite his flat tyre. Heyerdahl 21, Chris Horner 42nd, and Andy Schleck slipping away at the end to finish in 81st place.
And as the weather starts to really get bad, Philippe Gilbert has a smile on his face this afternoon, Phil, because I think he's now starting to show the form that will reap benefits later in the season. But the man on the top step of the podium, Joaquim Rodriguez, has had a day out in the Ardennes.
Yes, and a very wet day at the end, but they're all smiles because they have conquered the Mer de Huy and done it with panache today. And Joaquim Rodriguez gets his 4th win of this season alone. And really, for these guys who are dreaming of the Tour de France, Tour of Italy and the Tour of Spain, their season has only just begun. And the Epic Cycle Series, presented by Michelob Ultra, will continue tomorrow with full coverage of Liège-Bastogne-Liège, which is the oldest one-day classic of them all. Many of the same riders will be there as well, doing battle on the climbs of the Ardennes. And let me remind you also Also, we will be bringing you full coverage of the Tour of Rome over its 6 days. That begins on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to join us and find all about at NBCSports.com, our full schedule. Well done, Rodriguez. Goodbye now from Paul Showing. I'm Phil Liggett.